Good morning, everyone. So I get this question a lot, and so I wanted to just do a quick video this morning to tell you my journey into Myers-Briggs typology, socionics, Enneagram, and maybe I'll even throw in a little bit of astrology into the mix. Just when did I start getting interested in this stuff? So whenever I was going to college, the summer before college, when I was 17, one of my friends who's an INTJ told me about the test, that he was an INTJ and that it was like a rare type or whatever, and that just really struck out to me. Like, I was like someone that has always been analyzing human behavior, and so I was just so amazed that there was a type. And so I took the test when I was like 17, and at first, like, I kind of was annoyed, like, because okay, I didn't take the official test. I was annoyed because I was taking like the human metrics or whatever test, and I was annoyed at the questions because it would be like, do you value justice or mercy? And I remember sitting there being like, I don't know how to answer this question. I want justice for everyone, but also mercy. Like, you don't, and I was just sitting there like, well, you don't just give mercy away flippantly. You give mercy like strategically, and mercy is valued, but also justice is valued. Like, I was like so freaked out by that. And so I think when I took one test and I got ENTJ, and I read the description and I immediately was like, hell no, that ain't me. And I took it again, and then I got ENFP, and I still didn't really feel like that was it, and I took it again and got ENFJ. But oh wait, no, before I even got the ENFP or the ENFJ, like, I was talking to my dad about it, about the mercy and the mercy and or injustice question, and he's like, you're totally a feeler. Like, are you kidding me? And then turns out he is Myers-Briggs certified, and I did not even know that. And my dad is an ENFJ, so he was sort of pointing out the reasons of me being a feeler. But you see, I was raised by a feeler mom and a feeler dad, and had a feeler sister and a feeler grandma, all ENFJ or ESFJ. And so FE was just very much ingrained into me, that I didn't even realize that that was like not what other people did. So but then like he helped, like, by sort of being like, oh well, your cousin is like the ENFP, and then we sort of were like, oh okay, like that's why I get so annoyed with these sorts of people that are like my best friend one day, but then never follow up on their word and are sort of flaky. Like, he kind of explained to me what like a P was, and then when I actually read the ENFJ description, I was like, I really just clung on to it. Like, there was something in like, they are often misunderstood even though they're within a crowd. I just like, my like 17, 18-year-old soul just completely clung onto that and was like, yes, I am misunderstood. Oh my goodness. And like, yes, I am like a bleeding heart sort of person. Oh my goodness. Like, this just explains everything of why like people didn't like me, like, or whatever, or like why I felt left out and all those things. And so I think actually I was still in high school, at the end of high school, when I took it. And then I was like, that's interesting. And then I moved on to the next thing. Because me in high school, I had a group of about like 7 best girlfriends, and we did absolutely everything together. And I like never had a weekend alone. I never even really had an evening alone. Like, I was doing everything with this group of people, and I never like gave myself any time to think or process or anything. But I always knew I was very creative because I was in choir and theater and speech and debate, and I was always on stage, and I like loved the creative process, and was very kind of competitive when it comes to that, and took my art very seriously. But anyway, like, going to college, like that summer before going to college, like, I really didn't want to go to the school I was going to. I felt like a lot of my friends were, I guess I had in my little ENFJ brain that all of my friends would realize the way that I did, that this was our last summer together and that we should take advantage of it. But it seemed like, because I was friends with like a lot of P's, they just sort of would act like, oh, it's not a big deal, like about everything. Whereas like I probably was making it sort of a big deal, like wanting to orchestrate like big like events with all of our friends together. And I just felt like nobody really cared. Nobody realized that once I went to college, our relationship was going to change and that we wouldn't be this close ever again. And I didn't feel like anyone was really like caring for me or asking me how I was doing. And so I like kind of sunk into a depressive state that summer. And so the more I was in that like depressed state, the more I would like look up Myers-Briggs and stuff like that to make me like feel better and also like understand. And I would go on Personality Cafe like all the time, if anyone's familiar with that, like message boards. And it started where I would just read things about other ENFJs, and that's whenever I first like kind of noticed the functions. And I got really into the functions. I remember it taking me sort of a bit to really understand the difference between them. F, E, and NI kind of made sense instantly, but then it was like kind of really hard to conceptualize like TI versus TE and things like that because I wasn't as focused on thinking. Anyway, like college rolls around. My roommate's an ENFP and my other best friend is an ESTP. And the ENFP friend, I sort of was like, oh, like we are so similar, like we're basically the same person. And we've since grown apart now, but I think that I didn't really realize like how different ENFPs and ENFJs are because I kept misreading her behavior as if an ENFJ was doing it. And I sort of realized through that how different like ENFPs were. But anyway, to make a long story short, it's like I then started dating this ENFP for like a year. And I at first thought he was an ESFP because, no offense, like, I mean, I was sort of stereotyping because I didn't really understand all the functions quite yet, but I just thought like he was kind of shallow and not very motivated, and so I couldn't imagine him being an intuitive because in our relationship, I would always like have interesting theories about a current event and be like, do you think that this means that this is gonna happen with society? And he would like not really listen to me, and or I would be like, oh, have you noticed that in our social group, everyone seems to do this thing? Or like, have you noticed like at parties that everyone just stands around and looks at the same group of people and they never meet anyone new? Like I would like kind of get like wide-eyed and like bring these theories on, and he like didn't really care. Like he would like kind of halfway listen to me. And so it was that year that I really like, I mean, I started going hardcore, like interested in Myers-Briggs. Like, I was on on YouTube all the time. I was on Personality Cafe all the time. I was on the NF Geeks discussion board all the time, and I wasn't necessarily posting. I just was watching. Like, I was just watching so much, and I just kept feeling like I have so much to learn. I would never just like say something unless I knew it was 100% true. And I've always been like that. And so I want you guys to know, like watching this, that like it's taken me a long time to share my opinions. I've been watching and like theorizing about Myers-Briggs like in the background like for a long time. I just haven't been confident to share, and I've just been so like soaking everything in. And yeah, I remember getting in a few arguments on NF Geek. It sort of became a point where if I would see someone stereotyping on NF Geeks, I would sort of feel like I had to go in and tell them that they were wrong, but I wouldn't comment otherwise. Like someone would, if they said like ESFJs are stupid or ENFPs are more creative than ENFJs or anything like that, I would just sort of say, you're wrong, the functions, stop stereotyping. I would like kind of argue with people if I felt like they were stereotyping or being closed-minded, because I really value, like, ENFJs as NI and TI, I really value just, like, soaking up all the information and, like, withholding a conclusion until I'm for sure. And it seems like, honestly, a lot of extroverted thinkers, they just were jumping right in, sharing their opinion, whether or not they've actually processed deep down, like, what that means, or how the system works altogether, and, like, the implications of, if you're saying that that's true, what that means about, what all the implications of that are. And anyway, so I sort of realized that my boyfriend at the time was an ENFP, and I started Googling, like, what ENFP, ENFJ relationships, all this stuff. But then one of my friends, now my best friend, Crystal, that you've seen on videos, she, like, posted something on Facebook about being an ENFP. And I was like, hey, like, we should talk about Myers-Briggs sometime, because we were friends. And she is the one that kind of got me out of that relationship, because it wasn't the best relationship. But also, she is, like, the most curious, open-minded person, like, I've ever met. And she's so intelligent. And she just sort of came to me as like, all right, teach me, you're my teacher, teach me what functions are. And man, I really realized how much I didn't know by trying to explain. And I feel like I know so much about functions now because my friend asked a million questions, like every single angle that you could think of the functions, and, like, sort of made me get out what the answer was that I wouldn't have even had to think about if it wasn't for her always asking, like, well, how come everyone has a perceiving and a judging function first? Why isn't it perceiving, and then judging? Like, she was, like, asking me all these questions, or like, oh, well, why is a blind spot not the 8th function? Why is it the 7th? And so she was very curious, and it didn't take long. I mean, actually, it took a little longer for her to catch on to how the system of Myers-Briggs, or not Myers-Briggs, okay, which, by the way, I skipped socionics and Enneagram. I'm just going to talk about Myers-Briggs in this video. I don't have time to keep going. But anyway, I mean, I got interested in Enneagram and socionics about the same time, probably 2013, 2014. But anyway, my friend, like, she didn't grasp the functions, but she grasped, like, the archetypes a lot quicker than me. So we helped each other. It didn't take long for her to really get it, because especially since she would ask about it all the time, it got to a point where we started to analyze our friends based on the functions. Be like, do you think that this friend group is more TE and this friend group is more FE? And what does that mean? And we were just so intensely curious that we would talk about it all the time. And then, like, she introduced me to this INTP guy who I later dated, and anyway, he was also curious about it, and so we would talk about it, but it was mostly, like, me and Crystal, my best friend, talking about it. And I sort of realized, sort of through that experience, my TI really grew, because not only was I dating an INTP for a little bit, but, like, having to really bring my TI out to share with my friend. Anyway, I feel like Crystal and I, like, okay, that was, like, 2 or 3 years ago that I started telling her about Myers-Briggs. It was, yeah, 3 years ago. It was, like, the end of 2014. So it's been 3 years since I've been actively explaining the nuances of the type to people. And I think that Crystal and I are, the way that we view Myers-Briggs and socionics, I keep forgetting to say socionics, but the way I view those two is that they're one and the same. There are 16 archetypes, and each 16 archetype uses a set of functions. Myers-Briggs only goes in depth about the 4, but if you really want to go more in depth, go to socionics to see how you use all 8. But at the end of the day, 16 archetypes, that's just how it is, in my opinion, with both of these type function, or type systems. But we sort of are so far removed from, like, reading things about it on the internet, and maybe that makes us less trustworthy to you, but to me, I really think that we are onto something where we are thinking about something. It's like we are seeing the system in action, because you realize that whoever came up with this system they didn't read about it. They saw it by interacting with people. And like, that's sort of where I feel like I'm at. I'm not saying I know everything. I'm still learning, but I just want to be upfront with you that like, the information that you're getting on my channel about types is not like something that I read somewhere. Like, it's something that I've seen, and it's something that I have double checked. Like, just because I know one INTP that acted this way, or if I know one ESTP that acted this way, that doesn't mean that I'm going to conclude that all are like that. Like, it's based on the theory, and it's based on like talking about, asking Crystal if she knows any ESTPs. Is this true for you? Like, all of my theories I've shown here, like, I've probably double checked with her, and her and ENTE has like sort of troubleshooted it, where I'll be like, oh, I feel like all INTPs just don't really like my SE whenever it is very forceful, and they can kind of cower in SE, and I don't really know why that is. And do you think that that's a thing, or do you think that that's just the ones I know? Like, I want to just make clear that this is like a journey where I have been observing human interaction, and I love like all like the fun disagreements and stuff that happen on the comments, but you're really not going to convince me that I'm wrong if you like just link a source, because like, for me, I feel so far removed. Like, I've already read this, like, chances are I've already read it. Like, I spent like 3 years just reading about this stuff before I even had the courage to open my mouth and talk about it. So yeah, I hope that that helps a little bit. I would say that now in my journey, I am not as actively interested actually in Myers-Briggs or socionics. I don't talk about it. I only talk about it on here, really. And so that's why if some of you guys have tried to add me like on Facebook, like I am not really trying to have discussions about Myers-Briggs or socionics that often, like, but I do want to share my knowledge. So that's why I'm making this video. If you have any specific questions that you'd like me to say in a video, I would prefer if you reached out either on YouTube or on my Facebook page, not my personal Facebook. Right now, functions is just something that completely runs in the background of my day-to-day. Like, I'm typing people without even knowing, but I'm not even focused on it. I don't really care, like, what their type is. I'm thinking about who they are as a person. But at the same time, their type just sort of pops out to me anyway. I mean, this isn't new. Like, if you recognize an attribute, then it's easy to see it in somebody else. Like, if you are kind, then it's easy to spot when somebody else is kind. If you're curious, it's easy to spot if someone else is curious. If you see the world through the lens of functions, then it's very easy to spot, like, oh, that's SE, that's NI. But just try and like look at people as people. And it took me a long time. Like, I mean, I was looking at people as test subjects for a long time. But try and look at people as people, and then understand that this is just a theory that goes along with it. All right, happy Wednesday. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe.